Welcome to the Franciscan Spirituality Center in La Crosse, Wisconsin's What is Spirituality podcast. Your host, Steve Spildy, is the Associate Director at the Center. His guests talk about their evolving understanding of God, prayer, healing, and wholeness.
Welcome. My guest today is Wendy Mitch. This is weird because I consider you a friend. I've known you for a couple years. We visit on a regular basis. But the irony is I have never actually met you. We have never been in the same room together, and yet I feel like you're a friend because this relationship began with a class at the Franciscan Spirituality Center. We met, started having future conversations, continued to have conversations, kind of hit it off. And yet we live in this new world where we've never actually been together before. Welcome, Wendy.
It is very odd. Yeah, it's very odd. And it's even odd for you to be welcoming me because it's so familiar. It will be fun to finally meet you.
That's coming up in March. You're doing a presentation, a weekend for the Spirituality Center, an integral approach to spiritual development. That'll happen March 11th and 12th. We'll talk about that in a bit, but I'm looking forward to that day when we can say, hey. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I appreciate about you is your energy, and our energy levels are very different. You're the sort of person that finishes your workout at the gym by 5 a.m., and at 5 a.m., I'm still a couple hours from waking up. So
there are many people like you. That is true.
Yeah. And so my challenge of the winter is to just get through it, to survive. Like, oh my goodness, I'm excited because it's April and I didn't die during the winter. Your idea of a winter challenge is going to Africa and climbing mt-kilimanjaro.
Yeah. Not something I recommend to everybody, that's for sure.
And you just got back. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so a friend of mine does these sorts of crazy expeditions. She has climbed Mount Fuji, Machu Picchu, Mount Baker, and she was doing this still while I had kids at home. And I often said to her, when my kids are gone, I want to go on one of these excursions. So 2 summers ago, a year and a half, she said, so do you want to hike Kilimanjaro with me? And I said, where is that? Is that in Wisconsin? Is that like near Mount La Crosse, Granite Peak? I mean, I had no idea. It was in Africa. It was in Tanzania. Knew nothing. And in my naivety, I said, sure, why not? And so we were supposed to go last year, but COVID derailed that. And so this year we went, and we had 12 climbers. 10 were from the United States, 2 were from Spain. 9 of us summited. It was the most challenging physically, mentally experience of my life. 6 days getting up Kilimanjaro, which is 19,340 feet in the air. It's one of the 7 summits. And then 2 days to get down. And I don't want to say too much about it, but the summit day was a 6.5 hour climb from 15,000 to 19,000. I just did everything I could to stay alive. Just put one foot in front of the other.
Which would be hard under the best of circumstances, but you were doing it in the middle of a blizzard, ice storm, sub-zero wind chill. You actually could have died if things had gone bad.
Yeah, and they were bad, and our guides were watching us like hawks. At times, there was about a half a dozen times where I thought, this could all be over if I just curled up under that boulder and just shut my eyes. We left at midnight, so, we were kind of exhausted when we started. But the exhaustion, the ice blizzard pelting my face, 40 to 50 mile an hour winds that just blew me over sometimes. A lot of us, we would just kind of get blown over. Not where we'd fall, but we'd trip. And the temperatures just being relentless. It was a 6.5 hour climb of relentless attack from Mother Nature. It is the only way I can describe it. She just wouldn't let up on us. But made the summit and was just so happy to be alive. And then knew that I didn't have to go uphill anymore. I could just go down, which presents its own challenges with toes and knees and slipping because it was still an ice blizzard. I always say, go big or go home. I don't really do things on a small scale.
Some people have 1 kid. Some people have 2. You say, what the heck? Let's have 6.
What the hell? Why not? My husband, we were in church one day and he had told, after we had 6 kids, and he said, I never told you about this, but I had a dream when I was a kid that I was going to have 6 kids. And my husband's name's Rusty. And I said, next time, keep me out of your dreams. 'Cause I had no intention. I really thought I would become a nun. I mean, that is something I really considered after college. And these kids just kept showing up. Like every 2 years, I was pregnant. It's like, oh my God, this has to stop. I mean, you might like chocolate, but you can't eat it every single day. So yeah, 6 kids. They are ages 30, 28, 26, 24, and we have twins that brought up the end that are 22.
I love your twin story. So you had 4 kids, and then what happened?
And then we were done. We thought, well, this is great. Well, no, we thought about adopting. We were kind of in the process of adopting, but thought 4 kids, this is perfect. What a perfect amount of children, which would be crazy for many people, right? So about 2 years later, I got pregnant and thought, oh no, this can't be the plan. We can't have 5 kids. This, I'm sure, and I don't mean any disrespect or to take this casually, but I really thought that I would probably have a miscarriage, which I had had other miscarriages. I was just convinced that this was not the plan God had for me, to have 5 kids. And 5 months into the pregnancy, we went and had an ultrasound. And I had lots of ultrasounds, so I knew what this looked like. And I'm looking at the screen, and she's going with that little monitor over my stomach. And I went, wait, go back. That looks like a second head. And she said, it did, didn't it? So she goes head, heart, spine on the one baby, and then moves across my stomach and says, oh, head, heart, spine. Did you know you were having twins? And maybe a swear word or two did come out of my mouth, but it was, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And the nurse ran out of the room and ran down to the doctor, who was a good friend of ours. He said, is Rusty with her? That's all he wanted to know, is if my husband was with me or not. And so we weren't having 5 kids. We were having 6. So, yeah.
I want to hear about your journey a bit, and you've already referenced it. You at one point, you concerned becoming a nun. So tell me about your spiritual tradition.
The word spiritual didn't make any sense to me as I was growing up. I mean, I went to Catholic schools from first grade to master's degree. Only Catholic education. 1 year I was at UW-La Crosse for a public education. But my tradition, I was raised as a Catholic. The word spirituality was never a part of those conversations. That really hasn't happened until more recently.
So religious tradition would be a more appropriate term.
Yeah, religious tradition. I was raised in the Catholic faith. My parents, I called them pew flowers because, I mean, I identified that later in life, that's what we did. We went to church and we took up space on a pew. And it never was really integrated of my Catholic tradition, and what I learned all through my education was, what is the right prescription? What are the things I have to believe? What are the things I have to do? What are the practices? What's the moral code in order to achieve eternity, salvation, whatever that meant? I'm still figuring out what that means. It wasn't until I was at Viterbo. So I have my bachelor's degree from Viterbo and my master's degree. And I took a world religions class and went, holy smokes, there are other paths up this mountain. I thought there was only one, the true. So Viterbo really sort of nudged me into at least a broader understanding of what faith, maybe spirituality was. Catholic. I'll give you a long answer to your short question. Catholic is the religious tradition.
And so for much of your life, you identified as Catholic. But yet describe how your journey has continued to evolve in recent years. And when I say recent years, how would you continue the story?
Well, I go backwards first to say that I worked for the Catholic Church for 30 years, professional service in the church as a director of religious education, a youth minister, and finally the last 16 years as a campus minister. So the journey continued. I quit my job in 2018. I worked a lot of nights, a lot of weekends, and I didn't want to keep doing that. And when I quit my job, something shifted in me, because for the first time, I was on the outside. I wasn't in the inside as part of the institution, part of the structure. And then I started reading some other books, Eckhart Tolle. I was reading some authors that sort of pulled some strings at my heart. And I felt like there were maybe some windshield wipers over my eyes that cleared the scenery. Maybe the fog sort of went away, where I really started questioning a lot of the doctrine, the orthodoxy, the moral codes. our kids, having 6 kids, who we raised to be critical thinkers. I mean, they also fell into the Catholic tradition just because that's the way we raised them. But when they all went to college and started questioning, they would ask me, how can you be part of an institution that discriminates against you? I mean, that was a question that they asked me on a regular basis, and just asked me some really challenging questions that when I was working in the church, I would have some pretty pat answers. After I was out, I started asking myself the question. And my husband and I were on this journey together. Eventually, we left the Catholic Church. And that was kind of a big deal because I had worked in the church for 30 years and suddenly this very public figure is leaving the church. And that's a lonely place to be, to walk away from that, because I got a lot of questions of, well, what do you do on Sunday? Aren't you lost? Well, what about heaven? What about hell? What about your kids? And especially the don't you feel lost question. I got that a lot. So it was a lonely place to be. Since found more community as far as people who have left that tradition. But to be honest, I have never felt more alive spiritually. And spirituality to me isn't a religious tradition. It's a relationship, a journey with the divine.
I want to follow that up for the people who ask those sorts of questions. Have you stopped believing in God? What does that word mean to you?
I'm not sure if you're asking that question. I have never stopped believing in God. My idea of God has shifted tremendously. So right now, today, I would say the definition that works for me is consciousness. It's within me. It's not on the outside of me. I mean, my understanding, one of the questions I know that you had asked me in preparing for this is how has, my spirituality changed or been impacted as a result of being a mom of 6? And I have this very visceral experience of some really, really challenging days with my kids. And the only place I could go was in my bathroom because it's the only door that locked in the house was my bathroom. The desperation, my rage or my anger, or my frustration or my impatience with, 6 little kids under the age of 8, all I could do was go in the bathroom, lock the door, and get on my knees and just cry or pray or swear or scream at God. And what I learned through that is God can hold me. God can hold this. Because it saved my life. Or maybe it saved the life of people in my house that I was able to go into the bathroom and lock myself in there. But my spirituality just deepened during those really difficult times because God was the only one who could handle that wrath. I couldn't send that on to Rusty. I couldn't send that on to my kids. I would throw bananas occasionally across the house. That was never helpful. So going into my bathroom, those experiences of desperation that really helped shape who God is and that God is consciousness within me. I have the power within me.
Well, in that story, thank you for sharing that. I hear a really powerful experience of prayer. Prayer is not hypothetical for you. It is a real experience. When Jesus said, there's a scripture when Jesus says, when you pray, go into the room and close your door.
Literally, he just forgot to put the word bath in front of room.
When you go into the bathroom and lock the door, this is how you pray. There again, it's not a hypothetical. What Jesus was talking about was a real experience. And I think what you are describing is exactly what he was talking about.
Yeah, it was the most powerful experiences of prayer. And when there were no words, the Our Father worked, the Memorare worked, the Hail Mary. I mean, that would work when I couldn't come up with the words myself. But hitting my knees and just realizing, recognizing, surrendering that I can't do this alone. And that's what prayer, I've gone back to prayer every day. Now I call it meditation. I'm not on my knees in the bathroom.
And you had said that for you, God is consciousness. So God is a consciousness that you connect with or that you have an awareness of or you enter into. How would you describe that?
Those all were 3 beautiful descriptions, Steve. Yeah, that I enter into. I do a lot of hiking. Obviously, if you're going to do Kilimanjaro, you have to do a lot of hiking. So being out in nature, I have glimpses of this consciousness just being connected to the trees, to the snow in the summer, to the grass, to the animals, to the sun, to the clouds, a consciousness that it's one consciousness and I'm a part of it. I'm not separate from it. I'm a part of it and I participate in it.
Let me shift gears a bit. So when you come on March 11th and 12th to the Franciscan Spirituality Center, you are going to present a weekend retreat titled An Integral Approach to Spiritual Development. I'll describe my understanding of what the weekend's about, and please correct me. I would say the word God, and using the image of Kilimanjaro, climbing a high hill. Kilimanjaro is a very high hill, but any high hill, thinking about, say Grandad Bluff, you're climbing the bluffs around La Crosse. You stand on ground level, the community looks one way. And then you get halfway up Grandad Bluff, the community looks another way. And then you get to the top of Grandad Bluff, it looks different yet again. And if you were to get in an airplane, it would look different still. So depending on what elevation you're at, the reality of La Crosse looks different from different perspectives, correct?
Beautiful.
And so what you're talking about, an integral approach, integral spirituality, spiral dynamics, for me, those two are almost synonymous. I don't know how, I want you to take that apart. But that whole thing at different levels of an integral perspective, at different spiral level, concepts like God look differently at each level as you grow through your life, as you have different experiences. That's my understanding. What's your understanding? Fill that out for me.
Well, I think you might want to do the retreat.
I plan to be there. I will be the first person in the room.
I like that. Well, yeah, spiral dynamics. So someone coming to the retreat, if they're not familiar with spiral dynamics, I think it'll be an opening, much like you just described, these different stages or spaces of development that God, spirit, because we're talking about spirituality, those staying in that realm, it all looks different from whatever perspective you are. So if you take Kilimanjaro, right, I mean, I had this altitude to move through, right? I had to move through all these stages, and you integrate each stage as you go. So the same with spiritual development and human development, right? Spiral dynamics offers us a model to understand human development collectively and personally. So we move through these stages and we see life just a little differently with each stage. I'm not talking monumentous steps. I'm talking maybe a glimpse. Wow, this maybe looks a little different. And then you stay there until that doesn't work anymore. I guess that's my experience with the Catholic Church. I was there until it worked until it didn't work anymore, until I needed a new perspective. I had to, and I don't, the visual, the metaphor of Kilimanjaro being vertical. I don't want I don't want people to think that it's a vertical movement. It's spaces. I will use the analogy of Kilimanjaro, but it's different spaces, one not better than the other. So does that answer that question?
I hear one of the elements there is letting go of a very dualistic view of life, either or, black or white, up or down. As you grow, sometimes people come to see things more holistically, integral, more integrated. It's not so much anymore either or, it's both and. Or depending on the situation. There's times when people are a child and other times when they're a parent. That's why when people get older, sometimes it gets so confusing when their parents get to an age where I had this relationship with this person, and when I was 5 years old and they were 30, they would take care of me. And now all of a sudden they're 85 and I'm 60. I'm taking care of them. And that role has flipped. And so it's not either or, but it's both and.
I like the both and. My kids taught me this too. So, 4 of my 6 kids were involved in a program called Destination Imagination. And it's all improvisation. And they competed on a global scale. And the number one rule for that kind of competition is yes and. So you're working as a team and you're trying to solve these problems, improv, and someone makes a suggestion, someone has an idea, someone has a perspective. It's always yes and, not no or, yes and, to integrate and include, right? So moving through these stages, Ken Wilber's work. I'll reference Ken Wilber, I'll reference Don Beck, but it's transcend and include, which I just love, that we transcend it so it works until it doesn't work. So we move through, but we include it. It's even the parts that we walk away from, we still include as we transcend through.
So you became a mother of 6 kids, but you still had the experience of being a child. You were both a child and an adult.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're throwing a banana, it's like, who's throwing the banana? Is this the kid or is this the mother?
I was just going to say, sometimes it wasn't real clear. Oh, is she the mom today, or is she just the kid having a temper tantrum? As I just hope the bananas wouldn't hit a child. And it would be maybe a toss of a banana behind me, not necessarily pitching. But yeah, that's a really good description of it. And that's what I think some of the best parents are, those who have integrated that, their childhood, their teenage years, their young adult years, that you remember. And you remember the difficulties in that. You remember how you struggled with that, which makes you a better parent.
I want to end with one more question. We've kind of been circling around it. You clarified in the beginning that it wasn't your spiritual tradition, it was your religious tradition. But now you do speak in terms of a spiritual tradition or spiritual development. Mm-hmm. What does spirituality mean to you?
I think I referenced this in the beginning. I'll do the same reference. It's a journey, a relationship with the divine. Whatever that divine is, I don't have to name the divine God or Christ or consciousness or higher power, the language from the 12-step program. Whatever anyone chooses to label that divine, I like to say the divine. So it's a relationship or a journey into the divine would be spirituality.
For people who find the divine in the church, what would you say to them?
Beautiful. Because I have integrated that. My favorite part of the Mass, one of the questions so Catholic Mass, right? The Lamb of God in the Catholic Mass, Massive Creation by Marty Haugen. That has so much meaning to me. I mean, I went to Mass a lot. I would go sometimes 3 to 4 times a week because of my job. And I always found calm and peace in the Mass, in the ritual. I started having problems with the text, with the words, right? But the singing, the sacred songs, the sacred rituals, those are so much a part of me today. I will go on YouTube just to listen to Marty Haugen's version of the Lamb of God as part of her prayer experience for me. So yeah, anyone who's still part of the church, whatever faith tradition, absolutely. Can you experience the divine in church? You bet. I did multiple times. Still do.
If you have any questions about any of the programs that they offer at the Franciscan Spirituality Center in La Crosse, Wisconsin, we invite you to call us at 608-791-5295. That's 608-791-5295. You can also visit our website at www.fscenter.org. www.fscenter.org. Thank you for listening.